Hello everyone and welcome to a short addition to the video I made yesterday, the first ever computer game that we have recorded, and it wasn't even played on a computer. Alan Turing calculated the algorithm using pen and paper, and some of you asked a very interesting question. How come in the first game that Alan Turing himself, using the algorithm, played against his colleague Alick Glennie, the sort of algorithm opened with pawn to e4, but then 60 years after, when the program was actually ran on a computer against Garry Kasparov in Manchester in 2012, the computer opened with pawn to e3, which should not be possible as it's the same algorithm. And I thought about this and I had no idea why this is so. So I asked on Twitter, and someone posted this article, and it's on chessbase.com. You can read it, the entire thing. I will put it into the description below. First thing you will see will be the link. But just to give you sort of the short version, let's get to how the positions were calculated. So Turing and Champernowne used the following piece values: pawn equals 1, knight equals 3, bishop equals 3.5, rook equals 5, and queen equals 10. In addition, they had the following positional evaluation functions. So for the mobility, as all of the positions were awarded certain points, for the queen, rook, bishop, and knight, add the square root of the number of moves the piece can make, count each capture as 2 moves. Then for piece safety, for rook, bishop, and knight, add 1.0 point if it is defended, and 1.5 points if it is defended at least twice. Then you have the king mobility. For the king, the same as 1 except for castling moves. Then for king safety, for the king, deduct points for its vulnerability as follows: assumes that a queen of the same color is on the king's square, calculate its mobility, and then subtract the value from the score. Castling, add 1.0 point for the possibility of still being able to castle on a later move if a king or rook move is being considered. Add another point if castling can take place on the next move. Finally, add 1 more point for actually castling. Pawn credit, add 0.2 points for each rank advanced and 0.3 points for being defended by a non-pawn. And mates and checks, add 1.0 point for the threat of mate and 0.5 points for a check. So that's how the points were awarded. And as it says, at the time there was no machine, which we discussed in the previous video. So Turing had to conduct this experiment with a pen and paper. And okay, here you have, there's also a scan of Turing's faster than thought paper on Google Docs. Also, you can access it on the link in the description below. And in the original submission typed by the author on yellow paper with incorrections, Turing quotes the game against Glennie but deviates on move 21 from the game score that was later published in all the reprints. It is to be assumed that he corrected the first version of his manuscript with the moves that have been preserved for posterity, as the game we covered in the previous video. So let's go here, and it says in the early 1950s, Turing began programming Turochamp on a Ferranti Mark I computer. We've discussed that in the previous video. At the University of Manchester, at the same time, he tried implementing a rival program, Machiavelli by Donald Michie and Sean Wiley, on the same machine. Unfortunately, he had not completed the task before his tragic death in 1954. And now, interestingly, nobody seems to have written an actual computer program using Turing's algorithm for more than 50 years after Turing devised it. In 2004, the programming team at Chess-based software company decided to create a chess engine based on Turing's algorithms. The basis was Turing's description and the simple game against Glennie. And the programmer who undertook the task was Matthias Feist. He built a standard chess program interface for the chess-based Fritz program so that the Turing engine could be tested. And in the process, however, the chess-based team encountered a problem. The engine refused to duplicate all of Turing's moves recorded in the Glennie game. It deviated in 10 places. Significantly, already on the first move, the Turing engine wanted to play 1e3, whereas Turing had executed 1e4 in his 1952 game. Thus the confusion in the video that I made. What made the algorithm go e3 against Kasparov in 2012 and against Alick Glennie in 1952, the algorithm wanted to play e4. Well, they spent quite a lot of time on this. Actually, the chess-based team spent some weeks re-examining the Turing papers and discussing the implementation of the Turing engine. Since they could not locate the error, they consulted Ken Thompson, one of the pioneers of computer chess and author of Unix and C. He spent some time wrestling with the problem and in fact wrote his own code on the basis of his reading of the Turing instructions. His program produced most of chess-based deviations from the Glennie game, and it was quite baffling. So Frederick Friedel contacted Donald Michie, who had been with Turing at Bletchley, describing the problem in general and the most significant deviations the chess-based Turing program produced after the prescribed 3-ply search, which Turing used on his paper and pencil game. It is possible that we have got something wrong, he wrote, but I doubt it, since very often, especially in the beginning, we get the same moves with exactly the same value. I think it is possible that Turing tired after 15 moves when in addition the position became quite complex. Mish's reaction in a phone conversation was, "You are looking for a bug in the program, Frederick. No, you should look for it in Alan Turing." Alan did not care about the details. He was interested in the general principle. He also pointed us to a quote by Champernoun, who had assisted Turing during the 1952 game. In the actual experiment, I suspect we were a bit slapdash about all of this and must have made a number of slips, since the arithmetic was extremely tedious with pencil and paper. And in June 2012, Friedel traveled to Manchester to attend the Alan Turing Centenary Conference. On the way, he spent June 23rd, Turing's 100th birthday at Bletchley Park, a visit he will never forget. In Manchester, he assisted Garry Kasparov in a commemorative lecture on Turing's chess involvement. The two spoke about the reconstruction of the paper machine, and Kasparov actually played a game against it. You can watch the entire 1-hour lecture by clicking on the link in the description below. Also will be in the link that I provide if you want to check that out. And in the lecture, Kasparov pointed to a key moment in the game. It was the first time that a machine played a game of chess. After a pretty average game, they reached an equal position, and the machine blundered a queen. That famous queen captures on d6 that we discussed, and then the rook just picks up the queen. So very, very interesting stuff. Kasparov says, blundering the queen in one move, this is not a great accomplishment, but still the game was played and there were 29 moves. Not just legitimate moves, but you may call them decent moves. So high praise coming from former world champion Garry Kasparov. He confirms that he will play a game against the reconstructed engine and at the end of the lecture, which of course you've seen in the previous video. In the lecture, Friedel discussed the deviations we were confronted with and how they probably came about. An important point is that Turing, working with paper and pencil, clearly used his intuition to come up with the moves, and without knowing if he used the alpha-beta pruning, a technique that was invented by Alan Newell and Herbert A. Simon half a decade later, when machines could actually execute code. Essentially, Turing did not bother to calculate every single move in a position. Some he thought were clearly inferior, and it seemed pointless to spend a lot of time working out exactly how bad they were, which is the point of alpha-beta. So something that modern engines do today, they will simply disregard some of the moves. In the lecture, we discussed the problem of the very first move that Turing played e4, the chess-based engine, and Thompson's reconstruction came up with pawn to e3. And here it is very nicely explained why pawn to e3 using Turing's own algorithm is superior to pawn to e4. So in the initial position, material is equal, no pieces are taken, nothing has happened yet. There are 20 legal moves for white, each of the 8 pawns can move up 1 or 2 squares, and the 2 knights have 2 moves each. One wonders if Turing made 20 calculations, each taking a number of minutes before he executed the move, the first move, 1 e4. It is one of the 2 most common moves that start a chess game. The other one is, well, pawn to d4. And let us apply Turing's rules to the initial position. So the e-pawn gets 0.4 points for moving 2 squares forward, but just 0.2 points for moving 1 step. That's rule 6 pawn credit. So depending on how far the pawn has advanced, you get 0.2 points extra. So e4 is better, but then we apply rule 4, king safety, by placing a queen on the square e1. Counting the number of squares the queen can move to, they are the squares from which the king could be attacked by a rook or a bishop. And taking the square root to define its mobility, e3 gets a malus of 1, square root of 1 squared square, e2 to to which the queen can move, whereas e4 reduced the positional advantage by 1.4 points, square root of 2 for e2 and e3. In his game score, Turing gives 4.2 points for the move he played, 1e4, and adds an asterisk to the value, which indicates that every other move has a lower positional play value. The chess-based engine and that of Ken Thompson gives e2 to e3 a positional value of 4.4. So Turing's move 1e4 gets 4.2 points, whereas e3 gets 4.4 points, but it seems that Turing just disregarded the move, thinking obviously he was a chess player and he knew how to play chess. He just, I guess, assumed e4 was superior to e3, and it probably, and I mean it is, only his algorithm, as crude as it was, thought e3 was better. So comparing to Turing's move, 0.2 less for advancing just one pawn, but 0.4 more for king safety. Matthias Feist wrote Turing's calculations for e2, e4 is correct, which means he did not really calculate 1 e3. As a chess player, he knew that this move is not logical because in the initial position, king safety doesn't play a role. He probably looked at it and thought everything is the same for both moves except the e2, e3 is 0.2 points worse because the pawn moves just one square, whereas if the pawn moves two squares, it gets, well, 0.2 times 2, that's 0.4. So he disregarded it without further calculation. Incidentally, the move 1d2 to d4, one of the most popular in tournament chess, was certainly calculated by Turing, who must have seen that it is clearly worse. Putting a queen on the king square shows 4 squares to which it can move. The malus for king safety is 2.0. So let's take a look at move 4. Turing played knight g1 to f3 and gave the value of 2.0. The chess-based Turing engine plays d captures on e5 and gives it a value of 1.1, which is the correct move as I've analyzed it thoroughly in the previous video. Yeah, okay, if you guys are interested in the rest of the article, you can click on the first link in the description below and you can check it out. The point is, the problem why e3 was played in the game against Kasparov in 2012 and e4 was played against Alick Glennie in 1952 seems that it's specifically because Alan Turing knew how to play chess. So he, from the two moves, e3 and e4, he probably thought, okay, I'm not going to waste even more time calculating this because we all know e4 is superior. And it is, unless, next year a really strong engine comes along and says, no, e3 is far superior. And I remember some 15 years ago, maybe 20 years ago, I was in a bar and I was discussing chess with a colleague of mine back then. And he was a casual player, never really had any training, and he was convinced, and no one could convince him otherwise, that the best position you could have is the starting position. And then whoever makes the first move, and white always makes the first move, that white is the first one to introduce sort of chaos in the balance, and you have to ruin your position. So the starting position is the perfect one, and then whoever makes the first move ruins that perfection, and then the other player gets a chance to also ruin the perfection his own way, and then, back and forth. So it's merely a way of preserving the perfection as long as you can, and if your opponent ruins it a bit too much, you will get winning chances and you are able to win the game, which sort of contradicts what we know, that white has the advantage of the first move and it's always better to be white. He always thought that it is white who gets a chance first at ruining the perfection of the starting position. But yeah, just wanted to get that in, as a lot of you have been asking this question: how is it possible that the exact same algorithm that should produce the exact same move produced a different move 60 years ago? And then you guys said that, okay, maybe the chess-based team didn't really make a good copy of the Turing of Turochamp, Turing's algorithm, but no, they did a very good job. It seems that Turing just himself disregarded e2, e3 as the best move according to his own algorithm. You've been informed. Hope this helps and that your question has been answered. If you have any other questions regarding the matter, I'm more than happy to look into it, as I was also, when I first read your questions, I was like, Yeah, first of all, I've never really thought of it, and second of all, yeah, it is definitely it definitely is weird because I thought, okay, nowadays the engine will maybe give you different recommendations, but it will also, okay, it will say E4 knight f3, c4, d4, and they are all, fine moves, but it will always rank that one move at maybe 0.5 advantage wide. Then it will maybe rank the second one at 0.4, then 0.3, but one will always be the highest ranked. And of course, then the next year there will be a stronger engine and a stronger engine and a stronger engine, and the evaluation might, change. But yeah, all in all, hope this answers your question. So yeah, that's the game because there was no game. If you want to check out the game and if you haven't seen that video, do check it out. Will be also in the description. Well, first link will be a link to this article, and second link will be to the actual games between Alick Glennie and Alan Turing, and then between Turochamp and Garry Kasparov. So do check that out. I would like to wish a very happy birthday to Caroline A, and I would like to thank Anna Petanovic, Robert Kiefer, Welsh fan, Frank Pluy for your contribution to my channel. Thank you a lot. I really appreciate it. As usual, you can check 2 of my previous videos here. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you soon, continuing to check up on your wonderful suggestions such as this one and whatever else happens in the chess world. So thank you all. I will see you soon, and have an excellent rest of your day.